Hey guys, Uriel Kane here from Eating for Energy. Today we're going to be talking extensively about the protein issue, and this is something I'm very passionate about because there's so much misinformation out there in regards to protein. And here's a very common question that people ask. I tell people that I'm predominantly raw vegan, and they ask me, where do you get your protein from? Oh, that you just unleashed a can of worms. So let's talk about this. Well, the first thing is that people have been we've been marketed to, we've been brainwashed into believing that we need to eat lots of meat to be big and strong, and that's what we got to do, right? Strong men eat meat and whatever. Nonsense. Anyways, where was I going with this? Yes. So traditionally, even the Canada Food Guide says that we need about 15 to 20% of our diet needs to be protein, which is quite a bit. But here's the funny thing: the World Health Organization says that 99% of the population only needs about 5% of their daily calories to come from protein. The USDA is a little bit higher, 6.5. It's staggeringly close to 20%, isn't it? So why is there such a disconnect? Well, again, a lot of it's misinformation, a lot of it's marketing, a lot of it's money. Right? Big money behind meats and amongst the farmers and all that stuff. There's a huge amount of push for that kind of stuff. But if you're on a raw food diet, where do you get your protein from? Well, let's consider this. Let's look at 3 of the strongest and biggest animals in the world. Let's look at the gorilla, the giraffe, and the rhinoceros. Okay? What do they eat? Are they eating other animals? No. Let's look at the gorilla. Very strong gorilla. I mean, pound per square inch, force, just incredible. And yet a very gentle animal. What does it eat? Leaves and berries, right? Giraffes, what do they eat? Leaves. Rhinoceros, grass, right? Elephants, they're eating grass. What is going on here? The biggest, strongest, longest living as well animals are all eating grass and greens and leaves. Doesn't that tell you something? Well, obviously we're not animals, but we can learn a lot from what they're doing, right? Vegetarian animals tend to live longer than meat-eating carnivore animals, which is another interesting, thing to consider. But also, let's first of all, let's look at the breakdown between animal foods, animal protein, and vegetarian sources of protein. So these big animals are eating leaves and greens, and that's great, and they're getting a ton of, this is what they're doing all day, right? They're either sitting in the forest 15 hours a day, they're just eating leaves. That's great. You and I, we have stuff to do, we have a busy life, and we can't necessarily do that. But let's look at the common sources of protein. So when people think about protein, they think about meat, they think about eggs, they think about dairy perhaps. Let's look at a piece of chicken, for instance, right? So a piece of chicken, generally, I'm just going to roughly say about 20 grams of protein for a little piece of, chicken breast. Now what happens is that when you cook that chicken, right? We talked about this in previous lessons. When you cook foods, you denature their enzymes, right? Enzymes are forms of proteins. When you heat proteins, they coagulate. They basically kind of bind up and get really, really tight. Think about a fried egg or a scrambled egg. When you put an egg out of the shell into a frying pan and you heat it, it becomes solid, right? So from that liquidy form, it kind of condenses, solidifies, and gets really compact. That's what happens to proteins when you cook them, when you heat them. What that does is it makes them more difficult to digest. It also destroys a great amount of that protein. So if you have 20 grams of protein in a chicken breast, by the time you bring it into your body after it's been cooked, you might be working with half of that. Then your body has to work on digesting that protein, actually breaking down all of that, stuff from the cooking process, and then it has to render it into single amino acids. Right? Single amino acids make up proteins, and in the body we store amino acids, for instance, in the liver, and then our muscles and most of our tissues are made up of amino acids, which are built up into proteins. Right? So we're kind of working backwards. We're eating meat, right, which is protein. We're breaking it down into amino acids, and then our body's building that back up into proteins, right, for our structure. Here's what animals like gorillas and elephants are doing. They're eating leaves, they're eating greens, which are by gram for gram the greatest source of protein compared to animal protein, right? And what that's doing is that they're actually taking in the individual amino acids. So they're not taking in, compact proteins, they're taking in raw amino acids, right? So the body's taking in raw amino acids, very simple to digest, and now it just builds it right back up into proteins. So there's no breaking down and then building back up. It's simply, boom, building back up. Very, very simple. And again, we're talking about things like kale, gram for gram, a greater amount of protein per gram than red meat, right? The only difference is that if you have a 20-ounce steak, you just have to make sure you have the same amount of greens, right? 20 ounces of greens. So throughout the day, that's just another reason to get in more fruits and vegetables, because every single food, whether it's an apple or a fruit in general or a vegetable, will have a certain proportion of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, right? So if you're eating, a raw diet with absolutely no animal products, and if you're getting a good variety of things, you're going to no problem hit, minimum of, I would say, at least 10% protein intake on a daily basis. If you want to up your protein intake, well, there's certain foods that have higher protein, right? We talked about, we looked at almonds in, I believe it was the first video. We talked about soaked almonds having a higher protein content than non-soaked almonds, right? Sprouting and soaking enhances the bioavailability of the amino acids in those foods, right? So nuts and seeds, soaking them, like sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, almonds soaked, beautiful sources of protein, right? Green leafy vegetables, very, very, very high source of protein. And in fact, it's really the best source of protein that you could possibly have. Again, the key is just getting enough of those in, but it's not too tough. I mean, you have a green salad, you have a green smoothie, 1 or 2 of those a day and you're fine, right? That's all the protein you need. And again, your body doesn't have to waste energy and time breaking down heavy animal products into the eventual amino acids that we really want. So then, people ask, okay, well, what about, complete proteins versus non-complete proteins? And, I heard you're supposed to eat rice with corn to get, everything complete. Well, there was, obviously a time when that was more, I guess that was the way people thought. But what we're coming to realize now is that the liver, as I mentioned earlier, stores amino acids. So it kind of has like an amino acid pool, and when you have proteins coming in of whatever sort, so even if it's in a vegetarian or vegan plant-based source of protein that is incomplete, which means that it doesn't have all the essential and non-essential amino acids, the liver, right, which everything has to go through the digestive system, the liver will actually start to pair it with complementary amino acids to make it a complete protein for its role in the body. So, it really doesn't matter, right? Plant-based protein sources are always going to be better. And the other beautiful thing is that when you eat a lot of animal products, meat, dairy, that kind of stuff, very, very acidic in the body. And that's a big problem. And I talk a lot about this in Eating for Energy, is that acid creates disease, right? Acid means breaking down. Acid means removing oxygen from the body. And acid is related to cancers and other sorts of diseases. Fruits and vegetables are more alkaline, and they're obviously related to thriving and oxygenated environments within the body. And that's really the state of health in which we want to be. We talk about osteoporosis, we talk about heart disease, we talk about all sorts of issues that are related to acid in the body. And the biggest source of acid are animal products. So, think about it twice. I could go on all day about this. I talk a lot about this stuff in Eating for Energy. But in the meantime, come back to the website, eatingforenergy.ca/raw food 101. That's where all the free stuff's at. So, you can buy the book if you want, but you can get started with all the free stuff here. All these videos, all these lessons, you can grab them totally free. That's where it's at. So come back to the site, grab your free stuff, and start to incorporate or learn how to incorporate more raw foods and really a healthy overall diet into your life starting today. So I'm Uriel King, and I will see you there.